Hello, Bleeding Critic. This is Matthew Solomon at Matty the Glue on Twitter. I'm the writer director of the feature film Chatter, and thank you for inviting me to be a part of Horror Therapy, where I share with you a real paranormal experience from my life. Um, the one I'm going to share, because there've been a couple, was back in 2007. I had just moved into a house in Silver Lake, California, which is in Los Angeles County, like the east side near Echo Park. And I moved into this house, and a couple weeks after living there, I ran into a couple of the neighbors who lived a few doors down, and older couple. They had been around in the area for like 30 years, and I'm driving, pulling into my driveway, and they stop me and they say hello, and they introduce themselves. And the husband says to me, "Oh, by the way, if you hear anything or see anything, don't worry, they're not harmful." And I was like, "What?" He's like, "Yeah, don't worry about it. It's fine. They're friendly." And I was like, "Okay, whatever that means." And so I went home, and honestly, I'd forgotten about that because it just seemed kind of odd at the time. Uh, and so a couple months later, I'm home, and it was a two-story house, and really exhausted. I was upstairs in the bedroom, and I just decided to lay down for a little bit. This was like 2 or 3 in the afternoon, and so I'm laying down, and I hear footsteps coming up the stairs, and it sounded like they were wooden stairs, so it sounded like a woman's heels or something, like clock 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 coming up the stairs. And so I was home alone, so I jump out of bed and I run to the top of the stairs, ready to deal with whoever's in my house, and nobody was there. And so I was like, the floors were new. They were new wooden floors, so maybe they were settling. I don't know. So it was weird, and it scared me enough to get out of bed. And then there was nothing there, and so that was that. About a month after that, I had some house guests, and they were sleeping downstairs. And in the middle of the night, this time at like 2, 3, or 4 a.m., I hear this loud crack that wakes me up, and I hear what sounds like something dropping down the stairs, like click, click, doot, 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 and then rolls like a ball or something. And so I'm like, I have kids, so I thought maybe one of their toys or something. I don't know. In the morning, my house guests who were downstairs said that they had heard the same thing and were looking around, and there's nothing on the floor anywhere. There's nothing to be found, and it was really weird. So then I start talking to, I had a babysitter, took care of the kids during the day, and I told her, yeah, we heard this weird thing, and she's like, oh, I hear things all the time. I'm like, what? And she's like, yeah, I saw this guy in the skylight, through the skylight, looked like an old man with a hat. And I'm like, well, what? It's like, yeah, I see him like through the skylight. I'm not scared of him, but I've seen him before. And so, it turns out she's seen, she's seen like spirits and stuff all of her life, and she was hearing stuff in the house, and she saw this man, um, and hadn't said anything. But then once I brought up that experience with her, then like the floodgates started to open. So I then remembered what the neighbors had said. This was like 6 months later, maybe longer. And so I see the neighbors, and I say, hey, when we moved in, you mentioned something about like hearing things, and they're like, oh yeah, there's things that have happened in the house, and people don't stay very long, but it's all fine. And and so we kind of left it at that. And then I was like, I need to find out who lived in the house. So I start researching, and I'm Googling, and I'm pulling up the list of all the owners of the house and who had lived there. And there was actually Elmer Bernstein had lived there, who's a famous composer who did like Trading Places and like all these Ghostbusters and movies like that. And his daughter lived there, but nobody lived there more than 2 years. And it traced it back to the year 2000. So this was 2007, 2008. In 2000, there was a man, I forget his name, who bought the house after a fire. There was a fire before that. This man bought the house and rebuilt it. And he was an actor from Mexico, so he was really well known there. And so he built the house, and then somebody else bought the house a couple years later, and then a couple years after that. And so I went back to the neighbors, and I'm talking to them, and I said, "Yeah, the housekeeper said that she saw this old man with a hat." And they're like, "Oh yeah, that's him." And I think his name was Albert or something. That's Albert. I go, "What do you mean?" It's like, "Oh yeah, he lived in the house, and he was really proud of the stairs because it was a 2-story. He was really proud of the stairs. And one day he had a heart attack and he died. And he died. He had the heart attack on the stairs. Was rushed to the hospital. So when I was looking for death records and all of that, it never came up that he died in the house because they didn't pronounce him dead at the house. So this guy bought the house, was really proud of it, rebuilt it, died, had a heart attack on the stairs. His family took it over, sold it shortly after, and then every 2 years after that, somebody moved in and somebody moved out. And so I started trying to record EVPs. I started, I would hear, I remember actually there was another time I was in the house where I heard one of my kids call my name, and they were at school. And it was like clear as day. I was like, "Daddy," and they weren't there. So there are all kinds of things like that. And then when I was recording the EVPs, there was this one time where it sounded like hands like climbing up the stairs. So I heard the slapping of the hands, which is really weird. And then West Coast chapter of Ghost Hunters of TAPS came out, and they did an investigation, and they got all kinds of weird, weird stuff. They got, I don't remember if they got some recordings, but it was more like electrical stuff, and like the kids' toys would go off randomly, and ultimately they said that the wiring in the house was odd, so that they couldn't have a determination whether it was actually a haunting or anything like that. And everybody had experiences that night. So I moved out soon after that, and moved into another house, and then had some experiences there, which I will share at our next appointment. Thank you again.